Did they deserve to lose?
Yes, they did.
And should they lose again, who's going to actually step up and speak out? And again, I'm asking, and frankly, I'm begging in a sense here, Governor, is that realistically here, what I have heard from people is the soundbite, we need to stand up. The problem is that I hear that, but I never see it. And I'm not talking about just Republicans. I'm talking about, frankly, the entire system, which makes most of us say, you know what, I don't even care anymore. I don't care.
There's a lot of cynicism, and some of it is, frankly, deserved, because whether a Democrat or Republican, follow oftentimes just the money, and you'll see that campaigns are financed by people who are looking for special interests. Let me give an example. There are 35,000 lobbyists in Washington right now. They're lobbying 535 members of Congress. Now think about that. That's 70 lobbyists for every member of Congress, and they're primarily there to help pick winners and losers. And largely, some is with regulatory issues, but a lot of it has to do with the tax code. So if a lobbyist is able to get a tax break for his client, then somebody else has to make up the difference. So then that person goes and gets a lobbyist, and then somebody else to make the difference. One reason I think a complete overhaul of our tax system, going to the fair tax, a consumption tax, it eliminates the whole idea of winners and losers. It's real simple. You buy something, you pay the tax.
But is that
you don't
really
buy anything, you don't pay the tax.
But is that true, though? I mean, if we think about the concept of a consumption tax, if I make $100 million and I spend $10,000, or I make $11,000 and I spend $10,000, I'm going to pay the same amount whether or not I'm making the million or the $10,000. You know, the guy who has anything above the $10,000, he just walks with that money. I mean, who's going to make up that balance?
Well, the brilliance of the fair tax is that there is a prebate built in that goes to every month rebate to each household, the number of people in that household, times the consumption tax, up to the poverty level, which means that you really are not going to be paying taxes on your basic essentials. Now, beyond that, you would be paying a consumption tax, but it's proportionate. You know, if you don't buy a lot, you're going to pay a lot. You buy a Hawker jet, you're going to pay quite a bit of tax for that. So it really is fair, and in fact, the analysis of the fair tax shows that the people who gain the most from it are the people at the lowest third of the economic spectrum. Their economic benefit is like 13.8% improved over where they are now. So that's one of the reasons I support it. It gives people at the bottom of the ladder a chance to reach the next rung. And, Jack, that's where I grew up. You know, I didn't grow up a child of privilege. I do understand what it's like to want to do better than my parents did. And that's one reason I think this kind of an overhaul of a tax system gives everybody equal footing. It's fair, it's flatter, it's finite, and what I like, it's family-friendly. It does not penalize people for getting married, raising kids.
I remember in 2005 having multiple conversations with people at the White House about the energy bill, and we were talking about oil independence at the time, and I remember looking back and asking this question. I said, why don't we have higher standards for our automobiles? Why don't we actually address this and truly deal with this oil independency concept rather than simply placating those and saying, oh, we care desperately about this? And now what we're seeing is we're more dependent than ever before, hence 160,000 troops in Iraq. I'm just back a couple of months from that. In addition to that issue, we also are talking about Iran right now. You think we would if it were Africa? I don't think so. Realistically, part of this is that dependency concept. What are you talking about here in terms of independence specifically?
Well, I think we need to say that we'll be independent in a decade. And I know people laugh at me for saying that. But, you know, people laughed at us when we said we were going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. And we started out with the technology of essential bottle rockets and got there. We did the Manhattan Project in World War II in less than 3 years. It's very conceivable that with a combination of wind, solar, hydrogen cell, ethanol, biofuels, nuclear power, any and everything that we can use to transform from an oil-based energy system to a domestically produced, environmentally friendly, self-sustaining system, we need to do it. And not only because of environmental concerns and because of economic concerns. Frankly, it's an issue now of national security.
Governor, you confused me there for a second. For a minute, I almost thought you were a Democrat.
No, I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican.
You know what I'm talking about. I would never have heard this. 10 years ago, you would have been shot out of a cannon for saying that from the Republican platform.
Well, I've said a lot of things for which I get in trouble with some of the Republican
like
orthodoxy.
What?
But that's the point. The Republican orthodoxy has gotten us defeated. The Republican orthodoxy is what's gotten us in trouble. going along with the company line just because it's supposed to be what we're expected to say. I'm Republican because I'm pro-family, I'm pro-life, I believe in less government, lower taxes. I'm not Republican because I'm owned by, and I'm a wholly owned subsidiary of some oil company.
So what comes next? We look at this, and we started, and I about 1 minute left here. Realistically here, I look to the future. If the smartest guy doesn't win, what are you going to do?
Well, we keep fighting. You know, this is a resilient country. We've gone through times, it seems like every few years we say this is it, this is the end of the world, but it isn't. You know, at any given time it could be. But I'm not one that just says, well, let's just give up, throw up our hands, and walk away. No, let's fight. Let's make it better. This country's given me everything. I love this country. I look how good it's been to me. I'm running for president because I want to be as good to it as it has been to me. And if a kid like me, coming out of a struggling household, can be governor and can run for president, then there's still hope. And that's what I want to make sure that every kid believes in. And if we don't fight for it, then we deserve whatever happens to it. If we do stand up and fight for it, then let's make sure that we fight to the end and get our country back from the people that have in essence stolen it from us.
Governor, it was a real pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jack. Pleasure to